and welcome to Epiphytic Cacti. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about grafting. I am going to graft a Aporocactus species today, or at least I'm going to attempt to. I am definitely not an expert when it comes to grafting. I was actually wondering one day whether or not I could do grafting, and it seemed like grafting on Pereskiopsis, which is this little plant here. It's the only cactus that has leaves. It's kind of awesome. It's also very, very easy to take care of. It's one that, like, if you overwater it or you underwater it, has a strong tendency to be very forgiving. It's really kind of nice for like a beginner sort of graft. It can be a little bit difficult because of the amount of precision that you need to be able to achieve. However, I've got a trick for, I think, getting around some of that precision. So this is actually a micrograft. And what a micrograft is basically if you have like a seedling, a little tiny seedling, as soon as they produce a growth that is not the seedling leaves, what you can do is actually cut the top off and then do a graft like this. And so that's what this graft was, which is really interesting to, think about, like, that's how that worked. This is a lot older than you might expect. This was grafted on, it looks like 7/27/2019. So, this is actually about a year old. And then here is another one next to it. You can see I've got like these weird little things that I'm like wrapped just to try to hold them up, because at this point they're just a little heavy. And one of the things that I learned about this is that it's actually a little bit difficult because your grafts, they will snap here very easily where they're fused. Here is an Aporocactus that I did as a test quite a while back for grafting. And this is actually kind of interesting because I grafted this and it was doing really well. It was just a little teeny tiny piece, like this big, just the tip of an Aporocactus, just like the tip like that. And I had grafted it on there, and I don't know if I put the date. I did. Also 7/27/2019. I must have been having fun playing around with grafts that day. So I had grafted this and it was doing really, really well, and I'm very clumsy, and so like I kind of hit the graft and I knocked it off. And so what I ended up doing, I was so upset about it, what I ended up doing was actually regrafting it, and it magically took twice. So that was really interesting. And you can see right here, there are a whole bunch of spines missing. That was from me handling it to regraft it. Here's a little graft here. It was a seedling. You can see how well they do fuse after a while, but it's still always going to be a point of weakness. Also 7/27/2019. So you can see this guy really hasn't done much in comparison to some of the others. And something that's interesting about epiphyllum seedlings, you will actually see that even just in their normal growth. Like, for whatever mysterious reason, this just has not branched at all. It's just not doing all that great. And then we've got this guy here, which was just a little piece of a plant, and I just grafted it just out of curiosity. But the thing about this is a different way to graft on Pereskiopsis. What I did was I actually speared the Pereskiopsis with the midrib of this little piece of epiphyllum. Now, you can't technically do it with micrografts, but you can actually do it with epiphyllum or Schlumbergera, or really anything that was a little bit, that was a plant that you could actually like cut and whittle down like this into a point, and then you can basically just sort of stab graft it. And what ends up happening there is it makes this joint considerably stronger. So and plus there's more contact, which means you're probably going to get a lot better growth. So that's kind of what we're going to try to do today. Okay, so now that I've picked out my Pereskiopsis here that I'm going to attempt to graft my little Aporocactus on, and I'm thoroughly going to clean this table with some Clorox wipes and all the different things that I have. I actually keep kind of a growing kit with like labels and clippers and spades, and you can see there's a paintbrush in there, and there's like a water gauge here. I never use that thing, but I have one. And then there's blades and stuff like that I use for grafting, as well as I actually kind of get little kits like this which helps me kind of like hold on to things or whatever, like, you know, make initial cuts, things like that. So this is actually, I believe, a suture kit. And I think I got this off of Amazon. They're actually really, really cheap. So I'm just going to clean this space up. Okay, so now that my space is nice and clean and everything, I have my little suture kit here. I've got my 91% isopropyl alcohol. I've got my Pereskiopsis. I've got the Aporocactus that I'm going to try to graft. I've got a little cup here. And what this little cup here is for is actually for me to take this alcohol and to put the alcohol in here so that I can just drop my tools in there to disinfect them. I have washed my hands thoroughly with antibacterial soap. You really do want to treat this like you're doing, you know, surgery, because even just the slightest bit of like questionable stuff on your blade or on your hands can actually cause an infection your graft won't take. What I have here is then this little X-Acto thing, and I've got brand new fresh blades here. You want to make sure that you are using a very sharp blade. And, you know, you obviously want to be very careful, but you want to make sure that it is a brand new, very, very, very sharp blade, because the cleaner the cuts that you make, the better chance your graft is going to have of taking. So we're just going to go like that. And then I'm going to take this guy and I'm going to put it on here. There we go. It's a little tough to get in there. You want to make sure that it's very tight and that the blade is very, very secure. And then I'm just going to take this and drop him right in my alcohol. I'm also going to take this little scissor, because I'm going to use this scissor to make an initial cut. And take this scissor, I'm going to open it up like that. And I'm also going to drop that in the alcohol. And then I need to figure out which one of these I'm going to use. It looks like I probably use this the most often. I'm going to use a little tweezer here to make sure that things are secured. There we go. And that's really what I use this suture kit for. Is for things like that. There's also this little thing is going to come into play eventually. So I'm going to take that guy and I'm going to drop him in there. And I'm also going to, I actually have larger ones of those, and I'm probably going to need a larger one like this. So I'm going to take that guy and also drop him in there. And I think I probably need a little bit more alcohol in there. There we go. And it might not hurt to put a little bit of this alcohol in my hands, just to be, like I said, it's much better safe than sorry kind of situation. There we go. I'm gonna put these blades away. All right, then we're gonna take this guy. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm actually just going to cut the tip of this off about right here. So I'm not gonna take a whole lot of this. I'm actually gonna try it with something like that. Actually, I might take it a little bit more because I need to create a point. And you'll see what I mean as I kind of go about and do this. It's not the easiest thing in the world. It takes some precision, it takes some patience. And I definitely would not try this if it's like the first time that you're ever grafting anything. I would not try this with something important. You know, pick yourself up maybe some like cheap Christmas cactus, Easter cactus, maybe some like just cheap epiphyllums. You know, pick yourself up some cheap stuff to try to test things out with before you try to do something that is, you know, something that's a little bit more important or rare. I'm going to take my scissor now and I'm going to wipe this scissor off very well. And I've got a couple of things to cut here. So first I'm actually going to cut the Pereskiopsis. And there's two little Pereskiopsis in here, but I'm actually going to graft on the big ones. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to cut this maybe about like right there with the scissor. There we go. And that's just really a rough cut. I'm going to take my little tweezer here. I'm going to clean this guy off really good. And then I'm also going to take my blade and I'm going to clean that guy off from the alcohol pretty good too. There we go. And so, see if I can get in here. This camera's, I think it's having a little bit of a hard time focusing, but All right, so all I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this and then I'm going to make a very, very clean cut. Just like that. And you can see how beautiful that ring is, and it was a very, very clean cut. And then what I'm going to do, so I don't want to contaminate this, but I'm going to take this, the little piece that I just cut off like this, and I am just going to put him right back on there. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I want that to stay juicy and fresh and not dry up. There we go. So we'll just leave that guy there like that. We've made that cut. Now, these tools, zoom back out, these tools, they're going to go right back in here. I'm just going to leave those guys in there just for a little bit. I don't really trust just like dipping them in and then, you know, immediately like pulling them out. I just like to leave them in there for a little while, and then I'll pull them out and I'll wipe them down again. Here we go. Same two tools. I want the tweezer, and I want to make sure this tweezer like really, you know, the sides of the tweezer and stuff there. Here we go. All right, and now I'm going to take, this might be kind of difficult, so I'm going to take this guy and I'm going to grab him with a tweezer like this, and then I am going to cut him like that. Here we go. So I've got this little piece here that I'm actually going to graft, and I want you to see, I don't know if we can see this camera's not focusing very well on this, it's too small. All right, you can see that there's actually like a little pale thing in there, and what that is the midrib. And that is the thing that I'm actually going to carve down to. So I'm going to carve around this just so that I can actually expose some of the midrib. And so how I'm going to kind of do that, it's a little difficult here, is I'm just going to take this and I'm going to do this kind of upside down like this. There we go. So I'm just going to cut away these little pieces nice and slow. There is no need to get super rushy with this. There we go. And essentially what I'm trying to do here is carve that into a point. But at the same time, I also need to expose enough of the midrib so that I actually, enough of the tissue so that I hit what's the cambium layer, which is really the layer that is right around that midrib. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do here. Just carving this little point down very gently, very slowly, because what I don't want to do is just like cut this little point that I've worked at so hard at exposing. I don't want to cut so that I actually cut it off. But you definitely want to expose enough like this so that you can actually pretty much stab it. Like I said, it's called stab grafting. I'm sure someone somewhere has done this, but honestly, this was just kind of like my solution for having an issue with me being clumsy and hitting the grafts all the time. You know, like I know that there is like really easy, quick ways we can do like a V graft and just cut this into a V kind of thing and then clamp it. You can do stuff like that. But I actually kind of like doing it like this because I feel like I expose so much of the cambium layer from both of them, and I just have a lot of success doing it this way. Because I've tried other things this way too. There you go. And I can actually see when that cambium layer is starting to expose like that. And I pretty much just kind of want to, you know, scrape the tissue back until I actually see that layer. There you go. So you can see that I put this into a point. And it's a pretty good point. There we go. I'm trying to make sure that I definitely have that exposed and that I definitely have a very good point to take. All right, I think that's probably pretty good. All right, now what I'm gonna do is this little pokey tool that I used, I'm actually going to clean that off. And then I'm going to come back to my Pereskiopsis, and I'm gonna pull that little piece off there. And now you can see, let's see if I can zoom in here. There you go. So now you can see that ring, right? And I forgot what this is called, but it has a name. It's the ring of something or other. But that same thing that you saw here in this, that same little point, that little lighter point is the same thing that you're seeing here. And with cactus, if you can actually get them to kind of like overlap each other, but you have to get the rings to overlap each other, kind of like the Olympics logo. You want those rings to just kind of overlap each other, and that will allow the graft to take. And I find that this is so much easier to do because I can very clearly see that ring. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this and I am literally going to go just right on the edge of this ring like this, and I'm going to poke it. So I am legitimately going to make a hole like that for this to go into right off center on this ring. There we go. And I'm just really gonna kind of dig in here. You need to be gentle though, because you can actually split the Pereskiopsis. I have done this before. I've accidentally split it. So you do want to kind of be careful, but you definitely need to get that hole big enough. And a really cool thing about this too is that it creates kind of a different seal. All right, let's give that a shot. It keeps it moist, which is a really big deal when you're grafting. So I can see that that's actually perfect. It is holding in, but I do need to get something to actually hold this down. And one of the things that I really like to use is butterfly clips. So I'll show you that, but I'm going to show you how this is actually getting into this hole here. So you can see the hole, and you can see, oops, you can see the hole and then the little skewer that I made. So just like that. And that's kind of how that's going on in there. One of the things that I might need to do is actually take this and whittle this down so this is more flat than it is right now. So I think I'm going to kind of work on that for a second. There we go. So I have this, I'm gonna try to pull that tissue. There we go. So I have it so that that's flat now. There we go. So now I'm just gonna take a butterfly clip. It's actually, butterfly clips are these little guys. So I'm gonna try to get this in here nice and snug like this, and then I'm gonna take the butterfly clip and I'm actually gonna overlap so that I hit both the Pereskiopsis and the Aporocactus, making it so that it actually holds that together and it doesn't push its way out. And so what's going to happen now though is that in order to actually ensure that this thing grafts, there's a couple of different ways that I can do this. I can take a humidifier, like a fairly good one, and I can have the humidifier actually run, and having it run over this to keep this moist, because the wound between these two things really needs to be kept moist. It's just until it kind of heals, and I'm just going to leave that like that for a week to 2 weeks. I will actually leave this in a very humid place or whatever, and then I'll kind of take it out and move it to some place, but it has to be in a darker place. It can't be in a place where there's a lot of light. You definitely do not want direct sunlight on this. You do not want direct sunlight to hit this at all. One of the things that I've done with these is I've actually put little tents over them. So I can make a little tent to kind of go over this to keep it humid. I know that some people put these in Tupperware to keep them humid and stuff like that, but I actually have what are biorbs inside. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this little guy and I'm going to pull these weird things out of the pot though. I'm going to take these little guys. I'm going to give this Pereskiopsis here a little bit of water, not too much water. And then I'm going to put it in my biorb for a little while and just kind of let that do its thing. I might actually take this this one out. I think I'm going to pull or cut this little Pereskiopsis out, that second one. I don't want that in there. One of the things that'll happen with Pereskiopsis, and this is kind of important, is that like as time goes on, it'll basically continuously shoot new growths out of pretty much every single available growth point that it has. And when it does that, what you really want to do is just continue to cut them and continue to cut them and continue to cut them. You don't want to leave those things growing like that, because what it does is just really suck the energy from your graft. It's a little bit of effort, and there are tons of different ways to actually graft. So this is definitely not the only way. This is just the way that I found that personally kind of worked for me. Thank you for watching, and happy cacti growing.